Well, welcome to another episode of the Grazing Sheep Podcast. I'm your host, Big Tom Perkins, along with Dr. Cameron Meyerly. And it's warmed up a little bit there, Cam. Most of the snow, I'm over here in Ohio, they don't have any snow. If I'd have known this, I'd have brought a truck and just brought some for them from home. And so I'm wondering, since it warmed up, have you run any lambs out to Mount Hope?
Yeah, we actually just got back yesterday, ran a load up and thought we'd test the waters here in 2025 with a group just trying to clean up some pen space and reduce the numbers that getting hay into. So yeah, there was a set of training sheep that we had that uh, used to work the dog on, and thought we would have our other border collie coming in here earlier this spring, and uh, figure we'll probably have enough used by that point that lambed in the fall and are going to be open this spring that we can work with the dog. So ended up trying to clean those pens out and just reduce numbers a little bit further. So
Mm-hmm.
took some of those, and then Dad actually has a set of Dorset ewes that had lambs this fall. They were just naturally exposed, and a portion of them took, and then another portion is due to lamb here in February. So those were all Dorset and bred to a horned Dorset ram. And people might ask why why go that route versus the Katahdins that we already have and the Texels that we already have. And one of the reasons is they're different, easier to identify who's or who. Uh, but also, if you're going to depend in our part of the world, if you're going to depend on that live animal public auction to sell sheep, and for the time being, that's the route that probably going to go, because not a whole lot of time to do any direct marketing or uh, really working on some of those more profitable tracks of selling sheep that we've talked on here previously about. But uh, I'm hopeful that those sheep were creeped pretty hard. Really kind of got a little bigger than we were expecting, and we'll see what they do. And happy to share some of those numbers once we get them back. But yeah, it's really enjoyable. What I like to do is going up and walking through the pens and just seeing what sheep fit where, and maybe how I would classify those sheep. And it's just, I don't care where it's at. I know you're sitting in Indiana next to the sale barn I was at there a month ago.
Yeah.
Uh, if I had nothing else to do and there were no responsibilities, I think it would be a lot of fun to just drive around. And if it didn't cost a fortune to drive around and hang out at an auction all day, uh, I would love to just travel around, sit there, watch, be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But what's fun to me is the goats were selling when we were walking around and sat in there and watched some of the goats sell for a little while. And it just the differences in buyers, and kind of wondering where are those ending up.
Yep.
What does the footprint of that animal look like in terms of, well, where was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago, it made it here, and where is it going? So definitely some differences in condition, and it was noted on the price they were going for. I mean, there were some does, some well conditioned uh older does that were selling for 300 a piece. And just, it's a lot of money
Mhm.
a lot of money floating around, being paid for livestock right now. The lambs, like I said, we're hopeful. The lambs, I topped out at 430 a pound on those lightweights, and yeah, that's a crazy number
Yeah.
to think about. Those 60-pound lambs being worth almost, well, what would be over $250 a
Yeah.
piece. And it's like, can I get them weaned early enough to send them when they're 40, 50, 60 pounds, I suppose if you've got a bunch of twins and triplets, yeah, but those big singles, they slip up into that heavier weight.
Hmm.
This doesn't seem to be hurting you too terribly bad because our 80 to 100 pound lambs are over the choices are over $3 a pound.
Hmm.
So it's a fun time if you've got lambs and wanted to kind of circle back. What does it take to have sheep ready to go in January? Well, it's what Tom's going to be talking about in Indiana.
Yeah.
You know, fall lambing and how do you get sheep that are going to do that? Ideally, I would like them to do it naturally. Uh, I would be the first one to tell you that this was the first set of lambs that these ewes have had. I don't think that they met they did not meet my expectation for prolificacy in that out of season lambing window. But can we offset some of that loss of productivity or prolificacy with some increased prices and buy us some time to select for sheep that do a little bit better job, honestly. So we're gonna see. It's exciting, but I do think it goes back, and we'll harp on it today. We'll harp on it in the future, understanding what that market looks like, and then figuring out your management system, your management calendar to
Yeah.
line up how to get those sheep to the endpoint you need them to be at when you need them to be at that point. So it's exciting, a little nerve-wracking,
Yeah.
but if all I had to pick up everybody else's lambs and tell them what I thought and drop them off and the check wasn't going to you, it'd be one thing. But when you're like, man, I hope it's a good one
Yeah.
this go around, it
Yeah.
it makes you a little nervous.
As I put this presentation together that I'm going to do here in a couple of days, one of the things I did was went back through and just tried to come up with some figures. And that cedar, just going on, I think it's Premier One's prices, and those cedars are getting crazy expensive. But the cedar and the PG 600 comes out to just a little under $15. So
And that's it, the price today.
it's priced today, and so that means on a 60-pound lamb, you need to get 25 cents more per pound to cover that cost.
Mm,
So if you've got a set of twins, you're only looking at 12 and a half cents a pound more to pay
right,
to pay for that cedar.
right.
And that difference between selling in the middle of summer or August, September, even into October, the price fluctuation, you know, is way more than the 25 cents. It's a
Oh
huge.
yeah, you're talking probably closer to $1. I also think
What I
there's an
I went back to a sale in July at Mount Hope, and then last week's market price. So it wasn't even today's. It was a week before, and
mhm.
it was $1.20 difference in price on those
Was
40
it really?
on those 40 to 60-pound lambs, and that was not the
Yeah.
that was not the primes. That was just choice.
Yep.
And you
Yep.
were, and then that category below choice. We always see that. We never know what that is, so I just call it not choice. Um, it was like 95 cents difference.
Yeah.
So
They're still different. I mean, and that's
yeah.
been proven over and over and over again. That 12 cents a pound, I'm not gonna lie, it can add up
Oh yeah.
over the pounds, over the
Yeah.
lambs.
Yeah. So
It's a significant
yeah, that's all
upfront
that's
investment.
all you need to pick up is that an extra 12 cents, and and from there, your money ahead. You were talking
Yeah.
you were talking twins versus singles. My first thought on that is that single, because a lot of folks are saying that you do that fall breeding, you're going to give up lambing percentage for that fall breeding or the fall lambing. I'm sorry, and while that may be true, that single grows a whole lot faster and does not eat as much as a set of twins.
Mm.
So,
Your input in on the feed
right,
resources side of things.
yeah, is lower,
Yep.
than that set of twins. Now, does that pencil out? It still may not, but you can get that lamb to that weight a lot quicker, even if it's a single, and you can get that out the door and still capture that good price.
Yeah, and that's the challenging thing because for a long time, the industry that I was kind of raised in and learned about sheep in the clubland world of things, and the comment of oftentimes had been, well, I'd much rather have singles because they're fleshy and we can put cover on them and they look ready to go
Mhm.
earlier. I
Yeah.
can get 4-H projects sold out the door. Uh, a lot quicker than what I could the twins and most definitely the triplets. Um, how and I'd argue that a lot of those things are environmental, and the environment's playing a significant portion of impact in that. Can we improve our management? Make it our problem to fix,
Mhm.
not the animal's problem to fix. And can I improve the numbers that are going out? And
Yep.
all of a sudden, I'm looking at the cash flow of that model. You need the lambs ultimately, and there's uh, probably have Andrew on here. He's got a fun little graph that I know he was playing on when we were at WVU on. He was giving a presentation on prolificacy and looking at that same concept of triplets versus twins versus singles. I will say there's an asterisk on this, and if your ewes can't raise triplets and you have to raise the triplet, then I don't think it matters
No.
anyway. But the interesting dynamic when we think about pricing is it tends to run on a scale of lighter weight animals sell for more money
Hmm.
than weight animals. Doesn't mean they're on a per pound basis. So, if I have a ewe and the graph is out there and I don't have it in front of me, but if I have a ewe that can wean triplets at 45 pounds or I have a single at 80 pounds, well, that ewe with triplets has sold total pounds 135 pounds of lamb, and that ewe with the single, an 80-pound single, has sold 80 pounds of lamb. And a
Hmm.
lot of times, pounds of lamb is selling for 50 cents, probably not 50, let's say 25 cents less that per pound than that 40-pound lamb. So I mean, you can go down the rabbit hole so quickly on this stuff. Um, but you need those lambs born, first of all, because if they're not born, doesn't matter what your nutrition or management looks like. And then you need those lambs to live. So again, like yes, we can send more lambs out the door if all our ewes have litters of 5 and 6. But how many do I have to artificially rear with a bottle? Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a fun thing to try to figure out for all of us to figure out as individuals and try to produce more of these things.
Yeah. I was talking with a guy today, and we were talking about fall lambing. I was talking to a guy yesterday too, as far as that goes, about fall lambing. And one of the arguments, both were making was that, you're going to lose that prolificacy, so your lambing percentage is going to go down. And my argument was that while you're trying to improve your flock, if you're looking at a fall lambing, so you're trying to improve that twinning percentage in those sheep. And while you're doing that, because you're not putting lambs so much out on pasture in a fall lambing type of deal, if you're going to feed those lambs out to get them out the door quicker, that's just that many more ewes you can run on grass all
Mm,
on.
for sure.
And while I still think, you should be working towards a fall lambing group that'll consistently throw your twins. Um, but while you're trying to get there, you can run more, a few more ewes out there because
I
you're
see where you're going with that.
because you're not feeding those lambs grass. That's just that much more pasture you have for ewes.
Yep. Yep. So technically, you could run more ewes to
Right.
make up the difference in that. Not that, you still have to feed them during gestation, lactation, and we're not ignoring that. But if we're grazing those animals, especially in a maintenance side of things in that spring season, uh, and even into early gestation, we can push those ewes pretty hard on some pretty marginal forages. The other fun thing is if you're lambing in the fall and you where we're at again, get that cool season kind of flush in the we'd like to be stockpiling some forage. There's a good chance that forage has the content to really meet energy demands that time of year. I shouldn't say energy demands, at least meet our protein demands or come close to meeting what that ewe needs in late gestation. And if we need to supplement into lactation, well, I'd like to do it that time of year. I'm probably doing it anyway. So it kind of lines up. Like I said, I could see where you were going with that, and I like that idea. And it is something I think it takes significant genetic selection to find ewes that fit that that system. Uh, I believe it was Dr. Earhart at MSU had shared. He's given a number of accelerated lambing systems, and this isn't necessarily accelerated that we're talking about, but his comment is if your ewe flock is not lambing, doesn't have a lambing percentage of 150%, then probably fix and work on those genetics first, on your maternal genetics first before you try an accelerated system. I'd say the same thing if you're even moving to an annual fall lambing system. And it's just from experience, anecdotal data, uh, from personal sheep, from some sheep at some universities and conversations. I love lambing in December, January, and getting those lambs out the door and having some time when you're usually close to home with holidays and stuff to get those lambs on the ground and get them going. But what we've seen moving to a February to a March lambing window is we're gaining close to 20 to 25% in our lambing percentage numbers. Um, I think you take it another step from that January, February back to November, October. I think we probably lose another 10, 15%. Yeah, I think it's still lower than where we're at in our January lambing or what we were in. We're going to see. We're going to try to get some of these Katahdin ewes to breed for fall lambs, but it does have me nervous. And my question is that ewe that's having twins in the fall, naturally, uh, is she dropping four, lambing in April?
Hmm.
What's the seasonality? What is that seasonal effect on that reproductive system? And how just take it into consideration again when you're buying sheep out of different management systems. Are these going to work for what I'd like to do?
Yeah. So going back to lambing there in the fall. So if you were lambing, say October, you wean those lambs in 2 months till you're October, November, December, and you can put those ewes back out on some pretty poor stockpiled forage where you're not feeding them expensive hay. And in Ohio, expensive hay would be cheap. It's
If
really
you think
expensive hay now. Yeah.
if you think the land prices were high at
Yeah.
Mount this week, the hay prices were Dad made the comment. He's like, I didn't even know there was this much hay in Ohio.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, there may not be. I think a lot of this stuff, I know there were plenty of semis coming in from out of state, and there were a lot of people there buying hay. But it's that alfalfa mix stuff. I mean, you're looking at $400 a ton, and Yeah, it's I'm not saying that's outrageous for what it's been priced at previously, but it's a lot of money when you're trying to feed some sheep.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so you think about that in the hay situation that you're in. You're going to have a lot more money feeding those ewes to get them to lamb, January, February, March. Whereas you go with the fall model where you really need, so much of that used year is going to be spent on pasture. There's only going to be, if you're lambing in a barn now, like I am, there's just a few months there that you're going to have to have that ewe in. You're going to have to be feeding her hay. Whereas, we use up a lot of our stockpile grass to get those lambs to lamb or get those ewes through to lamb in January, February. Then we've got that second group in April, May, and we're feeding them hay even longer, it seems like, to get them to go. This fall lambing group just might make a whole lot more sense, and
yeah,
from a commercial point of view.
Tom's gonna set up a bunch, set up half the flock to cedars next year.
Working pretty hard at it.
Yeah, it's enticing, especially when you lamb and as I mentioned with these Katahdin ewes that I had said I'd like to put on a fall system. If we can lamb them in February, there's no reason why I can't get them to breed back in May. Yeah,
Hmm.
I have to think about my nutrition and they would be accelerated for this short window. I also need to manage my expectations in the fall. They just lambed. If my nutrition plan and our management is not up to par, probably don't expect a bumper crop of lambs in the fall.
Hmm.
Um, it's just one of those things. And I'm too nervous with the size group we're working with to throw rams out and get 5 ewes to lamb. So we'd probably pursue the cedar model to get them on that system and then make our selections from there. But it's definitely some food for thought and something we've been mulling over quite a bit from a forage availability standpoint, from a getting on a different schedule standpoint, and having lambs really what a lot of it comes down to, because the Katahdins aren't necessarily going to a commercial market in terms of meat production or in that ethnic market. But if I've got some fall born ram lambs and all of a sudden they're 8, 9, 10 months old. Maybe some of these might even be a year old going into a spring lambing commercial flock. What's their ability to cover ewes at 11, 12 months of age versus 6?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Do they hold up better? I know we sent some March born ram lambs out to cover commercial ewes, and I would say they came back in good condition, but they were not in excellent condition. And if you think that doesn't, if you think that is not a hurdle in which they have to get over and get back on track or receive excess nutrition or more care over the winter to get back to where they would be, that's a stressful event that goes against the growth that their body is experiencing, their body needs to reach maturity. I think I'm not going to say it's equivalent, but it's a similar thought process of having our used lamb at 12, 13 months of age. We know they're not going to hit maturity, that mature body size at the same rate that they would if we left them open.
Hmm.
So something that aspect has, can we get our elite genetics into production to cover more ewes in year one versus having a limited ram lamb breeding impact in year one? So I lots of things to to
Oh, I
consider.
know. I know. I just keep looking at this April, May group and keep thinking, does this even make sense for me?
Yeah,
For
for
me.
you, that's
Yeah.
that is a good thing to emphasize because I know yeah, I enjoy the April May, the idea of it from a forage. a forage nutrient standpoint and forage availability standpoint. You and I were just on a webinar the other night that we were talking about nutrition through lactation, nutrition through gestation, and a similar situation that you brought up with the fall window. If we have ewes that we've just dried off and it's January, February, we can turn them out on stockpile as long as there's adequate an adequate amount,
Mhm.
adequate stockpile there to graze. We can turn them out on that and let them coast through maintenance and slowly build back those reserves in that environment. The same could be said in early gestation. Can we breed these ewes in November to lamb in April and be grazing stockpile, reduce our hay requirements, reduce our supplement requirements in December and January, and then we've got lush green grass, which the lush part might be a negative to trying to get nutrients into those ewes that are lactating. But it comes with a host of other challenges with parasites and predators and everything else if we're going to lay them out on pasture. So again, it's trying to figure out what's going to work for you as an individual, you in your operation, and how you want to manage those things. Tom's pretty set on what he's got going for him. And so, and what he's trying to do with data collection, it helps to have the facilities to lamb in the springtime. But it's probably hard. If I were to jump into Tom's head, pretty hard to see those ewes sitting inside eating hay when he's got acres upon acres of grass that he knows that those ewes could be eating, and he's glad to go out there and move them every day to get fresh grass.
Yep.
So that's something that I think I'd have a really hard time forking hay. That again, this year and I think just in general, it's expensive. So I'm forking hay when and I'm doing the work when all I'd have to do is put them outside and they'd do the work and go eat their own fresh grass that
Mhm.
they'd rather eat anyway. So I know we've got some hay out for use right now, and they could care less. It is let's find every last sprig of stockpile we can get because it is 45 degrees and they think it should be greening up and growing. But
Yeah, we had those ewes that are out and have been out through this horrible cold snap. Um, we were just taking up three small square bales. I just felt like I should be giving them something. And I turned them into a new paddock. I would move the water over, and then I would drive out to the middle of that paddock with the gator and those three bales, and I'd open those up and I'd throw them out and around. And you would think those ewes would come right to those and just hit them. No, they're over there digging through the snow, grabbing what they want, and then you come back, the next day, and that's been eaten down pretty good, but they're all laying on it. And
yeah, if I saw that, Tom, honestly, I'd probably run out in the field, start stacking my squares back up, start putting my flakes hay back together and tying them by hand. Say, if you guys aren't gonna eat this, I will save it for another day because that would be it'd be too much for me right now.
they're eating it. They're just not cleaning it up. But
Yep.
I feel better they probably don't care, but I feel better they got something to lay on other than this icy snow
Yes.
and all that. But it's
Yeah, similar situation. The was throwing flakes out some off some big squares.
mhm.
First thing, and this was like the first big square that we had busted open, and we're feeding out on snowpack. First thing, guard dog walks over, lifts his leg, and I could have hauled off and ran him off the field because I'm like, do you know how expensive that was? Like, they're not going to eat it now. And so he did that, and of course, then goes and lays on it. I'm like,
Yep.
well, I'm a bed that I not only put out, but come out and give you another one every day. So
Yeah, it's a wonder. So it's late here in Shipshawana, and I don't think there's any nightlife.
there is not. Yeah, Tom asked me. where downtown Shipshewana was, and I doubt very few even know where we're talking about. But just throw it up on the Google Maps if you get a chance. And I kindly told Tom, "You are probably sitting in it." So the directions and that Tom received for this conference when he'd asked, like, "Oh, is there an address?" They told him, "Oh, we're just south of the water tower." And Tom, I don't know, was probably too nice to not sit there and say, "Well, I'm not from here and it's dark. So if you just give me some numbers and a street, I'd gladly take it."
Yeah,
But
I
uh,
did find a place, but yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, we're just
yeah,
south of the water tower, and I was like,
yeah.
yeah, we're definitely kind of in the
I
middle.
know exactly where you're talking about. I'll be right
Yeah,
there.
they
So
didn't say run down to the McDonald's and then turn left and go up to the Arby's and turn here, and when you come to the Burger King, turn there. Because I've not seen, I don't think for the last 6 hours I've seen a Burger King and McDonald's, and I don't think there's anything like that.
6 hours. Nice. Yep. He's on the final frontier.
Yeah, so it's and the internet is a little sketchy out here. I
Which
would
is
thought,
surprising because
yeah, I would have thought the
not
big
very many
city
people
of
are using it where
I
we're
would have
at.
thought the big city of Shipshewana it'd have been just pristine internet. But I don't know, maybe all 35 people are using it at the same time and that slowed it down. I don't know.
There's a good chance.
So,
Good chance.
all right, buddy. Well, we'll talk to you next week. And so thanks for listening to another episode of the Grazing Sheep Podcast. There's a YouTube channel, Facebook page. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do so at bigtomperkins@gmail.com. And so I'm going to be off to bed here pretty soon. And then next week, I'll tell you all about the big Northern Indiana Grazing Conference in downtown Shipshewana, Indiana.
There you go.
Yep. And I'll know all the sites and I'll be extremely famous here.
Yeah, I bet one of those might be true.
So, all right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Sounds good, Tom. Be safe.
All right. Bye.